Good morning, everyone. We let you in a little bit early, so I am starting a timer on the screen to give everybody a moment to get all of the materials. I'm glad to see some people are coming back from an earlier session. I'm glad to have you back. In the chat, it looks like it did not hyperlink. We'll put the link to the materials. And then if you guys want to say where you're from and your grade level and content area, either or, that'd be great so that we know how we can apply this to you. All right, it looks like we have some 6th grade core. All grade levels, 4th grade, 3rd grade from Beaumont. First grade in Hesperia. Oh, I wonder what school you teach at. I'm in Hesperia right now. I teach in Paris, but my siblings go to Hesperia Unified. Oh, Shadow Ridge. One of my brothers went there. All right, so that was our timer. I'm going to turn off our music so you can hear us a little bit better. And then we have just a few things to go over as far as moderation. So I'm going to turn it over to Isamar. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to this morning session of the 7th Annual Google Camp Conference. My name is Isamar, and I will be your moderator tech for this session. I'm here to provide virtual support for both you and the presenter during this presentation. Should you have any questions or need assistance with the Zoom interface, you can use the chat icon on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Search for moderator and send me a direct private message. I'll do my best to assist you. And now to announce this morning session, Transforming Your Writing Block Through Blended Learning, presented by Taylor Barraza.
All right, good morning, everyone. So hopefully you got the materials. The link that I put in the chat is just the presentation mode. So if you notice that you don't have a copy of the slides, I will put that in there as well, but it is nice to follow along with the presentation mode also, because things load a little bit easier that way, since we have a lot of videos to load, and Zoom is already telling me that my quality on audio is a little low. So if I have anything blocking on the screen, Isamar, can you see my full screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, great, because I have a little notification in the way for me, so I just want to make sure. All right. So my name's Taylor Barraza. I currently teach in Paris Elementary School District, and I've jumped different grade levels, so you're going to see different levels of material. This year I'll be teaching 3rd grade, and right there at the bottom, that's my link for my Twitter. If you guys want to get connected on Twitter, it's always nice to get to see some familiar faces, and I've already started to see some of you popping up on Twitter. All right, so this session is focused on transforming your writing block through blended learning. And I actually get the question a lot, what is blended learning? And if you were listening to the keynote earlier, a lot of people are starting to have more discussions around it. So blended learning is focused on not just direct instruction in the classic classroom setting, but rather involving some students watching videos of direct instruction, then working on something or collaborating in some way, and then meeting up with the teacher to work on what they need to do for their next steps. So how does this relate to distance learning? If you are still distance learning, I'm sure you probably have some synchronous and asynchronous time. So if you have asynchronous time, what we're going to be going over, these are activities that you can give to your students to get started. And then when they come to you, you're not wasting valuable time with things that are like, okay, put your name at the top of the paper. Here's how we're going to format our Google Doc, because they've already done that. And you can really get into the meat and the potatoes of the actual learning part of the lesson. All right, so some people may wonder why blended learning. In my classroom with blended learning, to make sure that we're equitable, this would be really useful during my small group time. So if I'm using this during small group, I have a lot of benefits. Some of the benefits are my students can actually pause, rewind, and rewatch my lesson. So if I'm giving a lesson up at the board, I may speak too fast, but if they're watching a recording of me, they can actually pause it when they need to and actually rewatch it as well if they didn't understand it the first time. This is really great for our ELL student population and our SPED students. The ability to catch up after absences and pullouts. So if you have students that are pulled out for services, this is really useful because they can come back and just watch what they missed out on and be able to catch up. And then also the ability to watch from home. Besides pullouts, if you have those students that they're always just a little bit behind, whether it's they are absent often, or maybe they just like to take that extra time to get their assignments done, this is really useful because you can send those videos to parents and they can get started on some of the work at home so that they're caught up. And it also helps with parent communication because parents actually know where their students are before progress reports come around. For you guys, if you start doing this as a team, there's a lot of benefits because we can see how each other are actually teaching writing. Writing is very objective, it's very personal on our style. And so you start to see the differences in how we might teach it. And it also gives the opportunity for some of your students to learn from other teachers without having to make groups and having to switch. They can actually just pop on their computer and you don't have to worry about the issue of losing time from sending some students to Mr. Smith while you're going to get some of his students in that transition phase. And then also just building on these lessons and continuing to improve them every year. All right, so I touched on this a little bit earlier. Talking about the equity part with blended learning is really important. So what does this look like? Some things could be, your blended learning can be in the classroom at small group time, and it's maybe an assignment, one assignment for the whole week. So they have that entire week to get it done. If you are digital, it could be during asynchronous time and maybe give them some time to catch up during synchronous as well. So just that ability though, to pause, rewind, and rewatch is really nice for our different populations of students. All right, and so what does this look like? Based on our group, I know I've got some elementary up to 6th grade and then a couple of K through 12s. So I'm gonna go with some informational writing. Informational writing is definitely something that's really important for CASP. And so 1st grade level is where we're going to start. So generally, this would be on an iPad, on their Google Classroom or their Seesaw, or on a Chromebook. You notice the directions on the side about making it full screen. That was important because with my iPads, they didn't see the option or they couldn't know how to put it to full screen. And so they couldn't see what I was doing. So when you're creating these kinds of lessons, including little icons like that will be very useful. So here they had 3 YouTube videos and they just got to explore 3 different animals, a lion, a wolf, and a tiger, to get interested in what they had to do. This was their Monday assignment for small group. And then on Tuesday, they had their pre-write. They had to go to Epic and select one of the books to start doing their research. Epic is really useful for gaining information, getting different types of books in students' hands so that you're not getting the same writing. I didn't want them all to write about a lion because it would be the same. Now, it looks like I have to sign in. Epic is free if you have not heard of it for teachers, and students can actually access this from home with your code until 4 o'clock. And then after 4 o'clock, if the parents choose to pay for it, there's the ability for students to have their own home accounts as well. All right, so it looks like it's gonna have me go back to that. And so Epic, with that, you can make collections. This was a collection that I shared with them. Oh, and it looks like the link is not there. Thankfully, a lot of the times it will save our collections. So I'm gonna go to my library. And you can share it directly to Google Classroom. And Seesaw. So you can share the link. You can also share the link with teachers. So if one teacher takes the time in your team to develop the books that they're allowed to read for the assignment, then all students can access it. So here are the 3 that they were allowed to choose. Since it is first grade, I loved that Epic had the read to me options. So we have the 3 read to me books so that all of my students can access the material without me having to be there. And then after they read that on Tuesday, they were then ready to follow along and develop a plan with me on Wednesday. So here's a video about the animal that I chose. I chose wolves, and we used a can have our map. If some of you were in my session yesterday, now we can kind of see this in action a bit more with first graders and how we would utilize this.
Now that you have read about your animal, we're going to write down the information we have learned on the can have our map. At the top, we are going to write the name of our animal. I read about wolves, so I'm going to write wolves. Wolves can howl. I remember that from the book, so I'm going to write down the word howl. Then I would continue to complete the can section. After, I'm going to think about what wolves have. I remember that wolves have sharp teeth, so I'm going to write down sharp teeth.
All right, so in this video, I made sure to reference one of the books that they did have the opportunity to read so that students that still needed that scaffold of a teacher having done something with them, they could use my 3 examples. By the end of this video, you're going to notice that I filled in only the top 3 for a can have our map. And as I develop through this, that means that students that do not have their own ideas can still get the practice of taking ideas and putting it into a full paragraph because there's 3 sentences that they can utilize right there. At the end of the video, I encourage them that if they did do wolves, to fill in the rest of the blanks on their own. However, students did have the option to do lions instead and follow along with that as well. All right. After they finished their plan, they were able to move on to the next step. Of course, the plan did not take one day for all the students. Some of the students had to go back and reread their book, or they had to take multiple days to get their writing done because they were still developing their writing skills. As they moved into draft, they saw me work with the can have our map. I filled it out completely, and we started developing the draft. So they were able to pause as they could see me going back and forth and also checking off that graphic organizer. I'll play a few minutes of that as an example.
Now that I have completed my can have our map for wolves, I'm ready to begin my rough draft. When I get my rough draft paper, I make sure to put my name on it right away. So I have my name, Miss Barraza. Then I'm going to add my title. I am writing about wolves, so I'm going to add it at the top in the center.
I did fast forward just a little bit to save time. So here I talked about what my topic sentence was going to be, and they can actually see me writing it. So they're still seeing the mistakes I might make.
Then I'm ready for my yellow dot. For my first detail, I'm going to go back to my can, have, are map and look at the different ideas I had written down. I like that wolves can howl. Now I want to add that to my writing. When I look at the writing wall, it says first of all. So I'm going to put that in a full sentence. First of all, wolves can howl.
All right, and if you notice, I did reference the writing wall in my classroom. So that's another way to bring all of this in and tie it together is if you have graphic organizers in your classroom that are there year round, or if you know you're going to put it up during this time, you can reference that in your video. So some of my students would actually pause the video, walk over to the writing wall and look at those sentence frames so that they could utilize them if they needed them. All right, and let's see, I have a couple excellent questions in the chat, thank you. So what program is the lined paper on? There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. The one that I'm using is a Microsoft app called Drawboard. I do also have a Google slide that I'll be showing you guys how to utilize because a lot of us don't have Microsoft. If you have a drawing app, Apple has a lot of different ones. You just upload a PDF. I have a PDF of the writing paper and I just write over it with any kind of writing app that I have. And let's see, another question was, do you use the green, yellow, red for the main idea detail colors? I do actually. We are a step up to writing district on my district. And so we utilize the yellow and red for yellow details and then stop and explain for the red. The Microsoft app is called Drawboard. It is free. If you want the paid for version, the paid for version is really just useful if you want some special graph paper for math. But if you just upload any PDF, I take a picture of any kind of paper I want and I can write over it with that. All right, and so that was actually as far as I did get with showing the students how I wanted them to finish their draft. By the end of the video, they did have their full paragraph. And then I decided for typing it up, because I did extend this a little bit for my students, I decided to do classic direct instruction for typing it because it was their first time actually typing on a computer. So sometimes I will not go through the whole writing process on a HyperDoc with them doing blended learning. Instead, I'll bring it back sometimes at certain points when I find it beneficial. All right, and then so a 6th grade example for my upper grade educators. This is utilizing the Explore tool again. They're going to have the opportunity to learn about what they'll be writing about before we start the process. So this one was focused on wildfires, and they had 2 Newsella articles to read. Newsella is a great resource as well for getting them some resources about what they'll be writing about. Newsella is also free and it has digital highlighting in it. It'll save those highlights, they can comment. Also, it has 2nd grade and all the way up to high school level. The really nice thing is they can access the same article at different levels. So you'll notice right here, this article that I have is at an 840 Lexile level. I can have it go all the way up to 1,220 and as low as 560. So certain articles will get lower and higher depending on that, but it's nice because students can actually access the same material at their level. All right, and then so for these 6th graders, they had the opportunity to practice introduction several times. So the next day I asked them to start creating their own introduction based on the prompt that they have on their computer. So their prompt was to write an informational text about fire, and they needed to explore how climate affects fire, how fires can be prevented, and how fire affects the environment, ecosystems, and communities afterwards. All right. If you guys notice, a lot of these say explore, explain. How I talked about earlier, saying that every year you can update this and you can make it look better. Right now, I would be in the process of changing explain to the writing process instead. So I would probably be doing either a pre-write or a plan heading up there. And that's how I can make it better every year. Before, I was focused on the 5 E's at my old district, and now I'm focusing in on the writing process instead for these labels. All right, so we're going to get to see a 6th grade example of how we used Newsela to gain some information.
Currently in writing, we're working on informational text. Right now, my example is focused on hurricanes, while your example is focused on fires.
All right, so for 6th graders, I did actually change it to something that they did not have the opportunity to write about because I knew that they were ready to write on their own without me. But I did select a topic that was very similar. I still went with a natural disaster. And then one other thing to point out is you guys are going to notice that in this example, I utilized the digital graphic organizer rather than having the students hand write. In 6th grade, I did do both, but at this point in the year, I allowed them to use the digital graphic organizer because it was towards the end of the year and they have had practice with paper and pencil and they wanted to start utilizing their digital resources.
Your planning page should already be filled out with the basic information you plan on writing about. Right now, I'm going to show you how to use your planning page to make sure that you include important information when you're writing out your first rough draft. So in paragraph 1, I focused on the question related to how fires, or in my case, hurricanes, affect cities or environments. And in order to do that, I'm quoting information from past hurricanes, specifically Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Irma. When I'm getting ready to write about Hurricane Katrina, I want to make sure that I have facts that are important and factual. So I don't actually, off the top of my head, know when Hurricane Katrina happened. So I'm going to be looking in my EPIC book that I found on Hurricane Katrina to make sure that I have the correct dates and find out exact information to quote how many people were affected and how the city was affected as well. Coast. Hurricane Katrina first hit the United States on August 25th, 2005. Right there in that first sentence, I need to make sure that I grab that fact. I'm going to put that it happened in 2005.
All right, so some important things that you might have noticed is, first, I do not have 3 detail boxes anymore. I wanted them to start seeing that writing is flexible, especially depending on your style. And I also wanted them to see that I'm going to add multiple bullet points related to Hurricane Katrina. So it's okay to have multiple sentences for just Hurricane Katrina versus maybe just one for Irma. And you guys also hopefully saw that I did go to my other tab for EPIC, find the sentence that had the fact, and write it down in my digital graphic organizer. So students are starting to see that not only is writing flexible, but they're starting to see how to manage their tabs. I try to make sure that I don't have too many tabs open, and they see me click back and forth as I grab information that's relevant to my writing. In the chat, somebody asked, can I share that graphic organizer? Absolutely, I will be sharing it. And so going back to some of the conversations I had yesterday was, should I set it so that students cannot change it? That's completely optional. You can always make it so that maybe at least one of those detailed sentence boxes cannot be deleted, or 2 if you want to add that 3rd. But right now, the way that it is set up, it has that flexibility for students to add or delete them for reasons like what I'm going over now. All right, I am going to fast forward in this video just a bit. So by the end of it, you'll notice I have several times that I've gone back and forth to the book. Now I have several details on Hurricane Katrina, not full sentences. That's something that I definitely stress with the students on their graphic organizers is we're going to be getting to the full sentences once we do our draft. So I just have bullet points of certain information that's relevant to it. All right, and then this video is 16 minutes long. Something that's incredibly important is paying attention to how long a video should be. It is a little long for students right now. I tried to keep it as short as possible. So for my students that did not need to watch the entire video, I told them once they understood how I was going back and forth, they could just pause and start filling in their graphic organizer without watching the whole video, because that's what that video was focused on. Now, students that needed to watch the whole video did go through the whole thing, and they kind of took the approach that I took and applied it to their fire writing. With the first grade videos, I forgot to talk about time. I did keep it under 10 minutes because their attention spans are shorter and they needed that time to, refocus every now and then. So about 10 minutes is as far as I would go. With lower grade, I would cap it at 20 for upper grade, but it is going to be harder for them. 10 minutes has been best for me. Do I provide them with a space to cite their source or annotate that? Absolutely. So I tell them to bookmark usually or on their Google Doc. A good thing to do is there's space on the side. And Connie, now that you say that, I'll probably add a box on the side so that they could start saving it, because I did notice some students that started Googling their own resources didn't remember to save. Meanwhile, the other students that used the ones I provided for them were able to annotate and cite their source. But the other ones just said Google. And so that's a good thing to add, and one of the ways we can improve every year. All right, in this one, apply. This is really, I would rename this as writing their draft. In this video, you're gonna notice I have a YouTube video on transitions because they need to start adding transitions. So I just recorded the YouTube video also in the writing lesson so that I didn't have to worry about YouTube being blocked for my students, and they can start seeing that without listening to me the entire time. All right, it looks like it is loading.
After completing my informational planning page for writing this week, I'm going to be focusing on taking my planning page and now turning it into a rough draft.
All right, so in this one, we talk about how to turn it into a rough draft. Now they're starting to see me open 2 windows. This was really useful for any kind of Zoom. You guys noticed that a lot of the times they needed to have 1 window to watch you and 1 window to do their work. So hopefully my students that did this the next year when they ended up on Zoom, they were a little bit more prepared for this. It really helps with digital literacy. And again, for saving time, they saw how to set up their Google Doc. And then I liked to keep it side by side so they saw how I pulled information from my planning page and started creating full sentences.
Now that I've formatted my paper, I can pull my introduction that I had already worked on because it does have complete sentences. So I'm going to Control C for copy and Control V to paste it right in there. This blue line tells me that I may have worded something a little out of order, so I'm going to consider changing it. And it says to amounts of community. Oh, I see where I made a mistake based on.
So this is important because I used the words I'm going to consider changing it to the suggestion, because we noticed that a lot of the times in Google Docs or Word, the suggestions still don't make sense based on the writing, and we might have made a mistake earlier in the sentence.
Rereading that.
The amounts of community suggestion doesn't make sense, but I'm going back and I'm rereading this section now. It says whirling winds, high tides, and leveled buildings. From space, you wouldn't realize how destructive this beautiful disaster can be. While hurricanes cause extreme amounts, communities doesn't make sense. I meant to say amounts of damage in coast.
All right, so we can start to see that they can see you make mistakes. After getting that introduction, I go through the video because I need my first transition. This is a cute video just on how to add in some transitional phrases. And then I tackle the first paragraph where they are now taking all their details and putting it into full sentences. All right, and then for this one, this is the end of that hyperdoc where they're doing it without me. This will take a few days, of course, because it is a lot more for them to tackle, and they can go back and forth. So a lot of the times I will have students on different slides in different steps. All right, so posting this to Google Classroom. Any kind of issues that might pop up might be YouTube blocking. I have had issues with it for some reason, thinking it was a YouTube video when I had it on a slide. And the way around it is I posted just the video to Google Classroom instead of the pretty hyperdoc with all the different steps. And then I would tell the students to watch the videos in order because the videos were just straight from my drive. All right, so you guys got to see both Epic and Newsela. If you want to be able to go back to that and see the benefits, I have that there. If you click on these collections, it should give you some that I've already made. So that animal writing that I did, after they did the animal writing the first time, the students just followed the same process over and over again. So you'll see we did an insects writing and a sea animal writing because they were going to be going to SeaWorld. So they could just, once they've seen the one video, they can actually do the same thing over and over without you having to make more videos. They just need to follow the steps. All right, so planning the lesson, some of the important things you guys were already thinking is, how did you do the graphic organizer? Which one do you think is best? With the videos, if you're gonna make videos, what are you going to use? Screencastify or WeVideo are my favorite options. They are both free and they have paid for versions. That is up to you. Screencastify is free up to a certain time. So if you need more time in your videos, then you would want to pay for it. However, if you can keep it under the time, then it's good. Honestly, if you're lower grade, you don't need more time anyways. You could use the free Screencastify the entire time. WeVideo is really great if you're used to editing videos, if you want to get more of an editing program, if you're used to editing things on Apple, that is also very similar. All right, and then recording your writing, just remembering to pause, take a moment to breathe if you make a mistake. A lot of the times I wouldn't edit out the mistakes because it just took up too much time, and it was really beneficial for the students to see my mistakes. And so if I messed up, I would pause, see how I could point out that I messed up, and then keep recording as well. All right, and then posting to Google Classroom and planning for conferences. I usually say Google Classroom, but if you have Seesaw, this integrates really well as well. Or any other types that you guys may be using. If you're using something else to post something, go ahead and let me know. If you're high school and you have your own website, you just post the link to the slides as well on your website. All right. So selecting which one you want to use. I highlighted WeVideo and Screencastify. Screencastify is it's an extension. So it's really easy to use because it's always at the top for me to use. So I will actually show you exactly how we might use Screencastify. I'm going to make a doc right now. And pretend I'm going to start having that writing lesson. So if I'm on the draft part of it, let's see, I'll pull up my material.
Taylor, there's
And now
a question. Sorry, there's a
Oh, yeah.
question in the chat. Connie would like to know if there's a benefit to posting in Seesaw over Google Classroom.
I love both, but the benefit, in my opinion, for writing is to use Google Classroom, especially for upper grade, because they can start creating their own, which I'm going to get into. But whenever I've used Seesaw and Google Classroom, I like to use both for throughout the whole year. They're used to going to different ones. So it kind of depends. What grade level do you teach, Connie? 4th? Okay. Yeah, so even I taught 2nd grade this past year. The 2nd graders were very comfortable with going back and forth. So I like to use both. And sometimes I would just start out with one activity on Seesaw because I was more used to Google Classroom. And then as I started finding what I liked about Seesaw, I added more activities in Seesaw, and they would just go back and forth depending on what the goal was. All right, so hopefully you guys can actually see my extensions. Isamar, can you see the extensions popping up where I've got my list? Okay, good, because sometimes it's been blocked before. So I click on that arrow, Screencastify's little arrow. It's going to prompt me to decide what I want to record, whether that's my browser tab, my entire desktop. I also have the option to record myself. I can embed a picture of myself, or I can take myself out. I like to keep myself out of the writing because I think it's just an additional distraction for them. And then I can start recording. It'll give me a countdown. All right, and then I'm just going to start my lesson. So I always remind them to put their name at the top. And then sometimes I give the cues for lower grade. I say enter, enter. And let's put our writing in the center. Now we can title it. And I was doing hurricanes. And then again, enter, enter. And put it on the left. And so if they don't remember how to create a new line, they can now find that enter button. Now, when I'm doing this, if I need to pause because I made a mistake, I can pause. I can also start over. And the controls are usually at the bottom, but because I am on a smaller screen right now, it's just up in the Screencastify part. Let's see, I'll go full screen so it gives me the option. All right, so I'm now going to stop my recording. And with Screencastify, everything goes straight into your Google Drive. It creates a folder called Screencastify for you, so you don't have to search for it at all. You can now rewatch your video. It gives some simple editing, so I can cut and change it. And then it gives some sharing options as well, so I can make sure that I share it correctly. One of the things that I need to do is show the settings. Right now it's private, so I can edit that. And I can change it either to anyone with this link or anyone within the organization. So within the organization, we'll limit it to my students and the teachers. But if I want to send anything home and maybe the kids don't have a computer to log into, but the parents have Class Dojo and they'll let them watch it on their phone, then I want it on anyone with this link so that parents have access to the video as well. All right. So going back to that, if you think you want Screencastify, click on that image. It's going to take you to the Chrome store so that you can install it right now, and we'll be able to get some hands-on practice with trying to record. If you're not sure about Screencastify, I do have the link for WeVideo. You can click on that. It's a bigger editing tool. I suggest it for people that really like to edit on the different Apple editors, or if you're comfortable with adding in layers of videos. And then finally, Screencast-O-Matic. If you are an iPad classroom, Screencast-O-Matic is great. Also great for your phone. Any kind of recordings that you need to do, Screencast-O-Matic is the one that's useful for iPads and phones. And so if you click on any of those, you'll be able to get to that. All right, and then so what we've used to present. You guys saw those graphic organizers on Google Slides. This link to Drawboard is the Microsoft tool that I was talking about. Cami is another extension. It lets you upload any PDF and you can draw right over it. So no matter what computer you have. And Seesaw, some of you guys, I was talking about how I love Seesaw. One of the benefits is you can also draw over any kind of PDF or Google slide in Seesaw also, even as a teacher. So you would just select something to open if you want to give this a try. Or you can go to the templates. This is where you guys will find everything that you saw in the videos. I have the Can Have Our map. The essay plan template is that 6th grade one that you saw. A flow map is a great one for lower grade students without all the extra details. And then if you just liked that template for the writing process, I do have the writing template where you can start inserting your own videos. So you just delete my old video and create your own. So when you get to this, it'll just prompt you hopefully to make a copy. And then it'll be your own file and you can edit it as needed. So those of you that are ready to start trying it on your own, you know, you're all already muted. You can start giving it a try. If you click on this templates, it's back to any kind of thinking map. If you're a thinking map district, it has a lot of thinking maps in there. And then you just start recording and having fun with it. I just started with one lesson and then I repeated that one over and over again when I started with 1st graders. And you could use the same video, like I said, with the animals. We talked about sharing, making sure that everybody can share it. A lot of the times your district will start with restricting it to yourself and then only within their school, but you can share with anybody if you make sure that your settings are correct. And then posting, after you post it to Classroom, we talked about the benefits of this. The real benefit is now having the time to poll students for writing as you need to. So the students that are ahead, you can actually have time to meet with them, because the students that really need these sentence frames, the sentence frames are provided for them in the videos. So you post it to Google Classroom and you can start meeting for conferences. I love to plan ahead for my conferences in Google Docs. So if I had my students type their rough draft, I can go into suggestion mode and start typing out what I want them to change so that when we meet, I can explain it to them. So if you'll click on that example, here I have Luciano's writing. I saw several just grammar mistakes. I put them in there and he can actually see the crossouts with the suggestion mode. So I can explain to him how it changes it. And then if he agrees with it, he can choose the checkbox. The checkbox will fix it. But if it was a personal style suggestion, he can click the X and say, no, I don't want to change my writing to say that. So it starts giving the opportunity for students to see that even if their friends said, oh, I think you should change it, they don't have to. And then they actually can kind of reread it. The nice thing is too, it saves all this. So I can see all of the suggestions that I've done and go back to that as well. All right, let's see. Some questions. Is Cami an extension? Yes, it is. If you click on it, it'll also take you to that Chrome store and you'll be able to download that. Elizabeth, go ahead and unmute yourself if you had a question. And if you can't unmute, you can go ahead and type it. I did have a question when creating samples. Am I using a touchscreen device or a trackpad? Anything that you guys saw where it looked like my handwriting, I did use a touchscreen device. The one where I was typing in the 6th grade example, I just used my trackpad, my normal laptop to do that. Touch screen was really useful for the ones where they got to see my actual handwriting. Oh, and it looks like Elizabeth's connecting to audio. All right, so student editing too. I like to tell the students to do a star and a wish. And I really like doing this because it starts giving those students that are ready to move forward an opportunity to help each other. It saves me time. You can actually click on these examples and see how they've worked together. It saves all of their comments too. So sometimes I use this for a speaking and listening grade or collaboration grade. And so in this example, I can actually see that I can't see the comments anymore because she accepted them. But if I click on the comment box, it will pull up all of the old comments and I can review them. This is also really great for classroom management. So here's the comment history being pulled up. I can now see that Jessica was actually very active in reading Eva's work, and she did several suggestions on making sure that Eva had edited her work. So this is a good way to make sure that their ice cream partners in my classroom are working together. One of the other examples, you can see this student did not fully get to accept them. So you can actually start to see how it shows those cross out marks again. And this student did utilize the star and a wish. She gave something that she liked. And then she mentioned how she wishes that she deleted something because something was not needed. All right, let's see. Adriana, I do have a YouTube channel. I only have a few videos up, but I'll put that in the link as well. I'm working on trying to get that in there because I do think it's really useful. If we start doing something like this, if you liked the lesson and it works for your students, you just use it right away. You can take a copy and say, okay, you're learning from Miss Barraza today. Just like I have a couple of YouTubes that my students are pretty used to watching some other teachers teach them for the day. And then Elizabeth, it seems like we can't get you to unmute. If you want to type your question, I'll definitely go back as well. This is just a quick example of what I use to keep my students on task when I'm working with them, talking about that blended learning. They have a list on the board of their options for small group time while I'm pulling those students at certain rounds to meet with them about their writing. If you want a copy, this is from Daily 5. If you've ever been to one of their conferences, it's a really great resource on how to structure your small group. If you're from, I saw some Hesperia people. I know Hesperia utilizes Daily 5. It's really great. How long do I try to keep my conferences? Excellent. With my students, if I've pre-planned it, my individual conferences only take me about 5 minutes. If it's a student that just needs a few tweaks, my students that need more direct instruction, it can take up to 15. So I try to group my quick ones together. So you'll notice that round one has several students. Those were my students that I could just check in with them, give them a little direction, and then they can go on their own. And that's Step It Up. If you guys want to see some examples of what you get out of this, what are you really going to get from the students? Here's some of my favorite first grade examples. They screencastified their own videos. So after they continued to write, I got to listen to them and they got to listen to each other on Google Classroom, which had a lot of benefits with trying to see what they were trying to say versus what they were able to write. So if you click, I'm going to click on one. Jacob, I got a lot more from listening to him than from reading his writing. So hopefully you guys notice what I noticed when I actually watched his video.
In my opinion, fall is the best season. One reason I like fall is I like the leaves. Another reason I fall is the best is the leaves or big leaves. I like fall.
All right, so right there, he gave me more information. If I would have just read this, I would have thought he repeated his sentence, and I would have needed to work with him on not repeating details. But I noticed that as he was reading it, he either edited it out loud or he just forgot to type that information. So he was actually building upon why he likes the leaves. And I was really excited to hear that instead of just being at home on my couch and marking him down when really he had that ability to step it up.
Falls because the Thanksgiving is on falls. Falls is fun.
All right, and then of course, besides just getting to see more from them and understand what they were thinking, is it's very cute to listen to them. Parents love being sent these videos, and it makes a really great conversation piece for conferences. If you want to see another first grade example, go ahead and click on that snowflake. Now, sixth grade examples. Another tool is Book Creator. I just put students on it sometimes and I let them do it for fun. So you'll notice Daniela added in a lot more art elements to her writing to make it more of a book. And again, this is free also. So if you click on any of these links, it'll take you to the websites if you want to start exploring. It's a lot like Google Slides. So if you've used Google Slides with your class, your students are going to catch on faster than you will. Can you use Flipgrid for this too? Absolutely. I would definitely use Flipgrid for this. It makes it a little bit easier if you already have that set up. Or Seesaw. If you've used the recording tools on Seesaw, you just upload their writing into it and they can record. But I do like Flipgrid for getting those peer comments. And something that you'll notice is I would have students watch each other's videos and they catch each other's mistakes and they come up to me and they say, hey, can I go tell them? And they want to change their video or they edit it themselves later and they re-record themselves over and over again. This is great for students that were absent. It's great for students to hear themselves speak out loud. There's not a lot of opportunities for them to do that. And so their language development is going to increase as well. All right, so if you're wondering, how do I get my students to do this? I do have little posters for you to print out and put in your classroom for your students that are able to read and follow along these steps. One is for the iPad app, if you are an iPad classroom. And the other one is for Screencastify, because that was one of the extensions that I really liked. Flipgrid does allow screen recording. It's newer, and that's why I don't have that on here, but it is very easy to follow along. I love Flipgrid's screen recording. And for students to be able to access each other's writing and watch it, I would post QR codes in the classroom. They could walk up with their device, and when they clicked on the QR code, it would take them to all the videos of their classmates. They could watch their favorite classmates' videos without having to talk to each other or read it to each other. So I would have a day where if they were finished, they could access and watch each other's videos. And it's great for posting in the classroom for administration, parents, open house. They can go to that with their cell phones and pull it up. And if you need an extension for that, there's a great link in here for a good extension that's really easy to use. All right, and then we do thankfully have a little bit of time, I believe, to kind of take anything that you were soaking in and take questions. If you do have time to fill out an evaluation for me, I would really appreciate it so that I can continue to improve. And at this moment, if you guys have questions, you can put it in the chat. You can also start trying to record your own videos and troubleshooting it while I'm here if you have a question also. Thank you guys. If there were any links that you need, all of these resources, you can make a copy. If you have an issue with that, let me know as well. Thank you guys. I hope you have a good rest of the conference.
All right, if there's no questions, then we're going to go ahead and close out the session.
Did I share my presentation? Yes. Let me get out of presentation mode. Let's see if it'll pull it up. There it goes.
Excuse me, I'm Elizabeth Burkett. I came in late and I completely missed this. Can you give me the link?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll get it right now. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. It looked great. I went, oh.
Yeah, and the link is in Sched if anybody is worried about missing it. The link's in there for you to go back to. I do think, Isamar, are these being recorded too for them to rewatch?
Yes, yes. So we're recording the sessions, and I'm not sure if it'll be emailed directly to the participants, but I'll go ahead and make sure that
Thank you so much. I got it. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Okay, if there's no other questions, then we're just going to go ahead and close out this session, give you a couple of minutes for the next one. And just thank you very much to Taylor for sharing her expertise and her knowledge. As she mentioned, the materials will be in the Sched app. And if you could also provide feedback through Sched as well, that can help us provide you with extraordinary presentations. So thank you for joining us this morning. Please proceed to session 5, where you can join us for a quick 15-minute wellness break. And we'll see you for the next session.